Picture the postcard version of San Diego. Palm trees over Mission Bay. Surfers paddling out at sunrise in Ocean Beach. A perfect 72 degrees almost every day of the year. That version is real. You can drive to it this afternoon. But it's not the whole story. Because for every stretch of this city that looks like a tourism brochure, another stretch just a few miles away carries a completely different weight. Higher crime. Lower income. Home values that have quietly drifted out of reach of the people who grew up there. Here's a number worth sitting with before we even start. Carmel Valley, one of the best-regarded neighborhoods in the city, has a median home value north of $1.6 million and a median household income above $150,000. Mount Hope, the neighborhood that closes out this list, has a median home value around $288,000 and a median income barely above $37,000. Those two places sit inside the same city limits, roughly 20 minutes apart by car. 20 minutes. That's the entire distance between two completely different versions of what it means to live in San Diego. Today, we're counting down 7 neighborhoods that consistently land at the bottom of the city's own rankings, using crime data, unemployment, median income, and median home value stacked together across every neighborhood in the city. We're not doing this to make fun of anyone's hometown, or to tell you these are no-go zones to avoid at all costs. Most people who live in these places love where they live, raise families there, and wouldn't leave if you paid them. What this ranking actually measures is whether the underlying economic and safety conditions are working against the people who live there, compared to the rest of the city around them. Keep that distinction in mind as we go. Let's get into it. Number 7. Memorial. Memorial sits tucked into the southeastern edge of San Diego, close enough to downtown to see the skyline, boxed in on either side by Interstate 5 and Interstate 15. Median household income here sits close to $30,000 a year, the lowest of any neighborhood on this list. Median home value runs around $300,000. So, on paper, that sounds affordable for San Diego. In practice, it's 10 times higher than what most local households actually earn. Violent crime runs well above the city average here. And yet drive through it, and you won't find a wasteland. There's a public pool, a skate park local kids actually use, modest homes owned by the same families for 2 or 3 generations. Memorial didn't fail on its own. It got boxed in by freeways built to move other people through, and underinvested in for decades in the process. It's a pattern that shows up in older working-class neighborhoods across the country, not just here. Once a freeway goes in, it doesn't just bring noise and exhaust. It fragments a neighborhood's internal geography, cutting off walking routes and splitting what used to be one cohesive area into pieces that each have to fend for themselves. Number 6. Palm City. Say the name out loud and it sounds like a promise. Palm trees, warm air, a quick drive to the bay. The reality is more complicated. Unemployment runs around 6.3%, notably elevated for the city. Median home value sits near $193,000 against a median income of about $69,000. That low price tag isn't a bargain. It's a market that has, in effect, stopped paying attention to this neighborhood, the same way it has for the border-adjacent South Bay communities around it. Jobs here have historically skewed toward warehousing and light industrial work tied to the nearby Otay Mesa corridor, steady employment, but rarely the kind of wage growth that lets a family build real equity over a generation. That's a different problem than crime or safety. You can't police your way out of an opportunity gap. Number 5. Emerald Hills. Here's where the list gets genuinely interesting, because Emerald Hills doesn't look, on the ground, like it belongs anywhere near a worst neighborhoods ranking. Household income here actually sits above the national average, close to $106,000. Homes have been appreciating, not collapsing, typically selling within about 30 days. 6. There's a library, 6 parks, a trolley stop that gets you downtown without touching a freeway. So why the low ranking? Crime, specifically a safety score that lands below the national average, even while almost every other quality of life indicator points the opposite direction. R. It's a reminder that a ranking built around a handful of numbers can flatten a genuinely stable, appreciating neighborhood into the same category as places facing real economic distress. Number 4. Midtown District. Midtown sits just north of downtown, bordering the airport. Here's the twist. The local economy is healthy. Unemployment runs around 3%, one of the better rates on this entire list. So what earns it a spot at number 4? Real estate. Median home prices have climbed past $1,089,000, meaningfully higher than San Diego's overall citywide median 5. Midtown is proof that worst doesn't always mean poor or dangerous. Sometimes it just means priced entirely out of reach of the people the neighborhood is supposed to serve. Teachers, nurses, city employees who work nearby but can no longer afford to live there. Number 3. San Ysidro. San Ysidro sits at the absolute southern tip of the city, home to the busiest land port of entry in the entire Western Hemisphere. More than 15 million vehicles and 30 million people move through here every year, a number that dwarfs almost every other border crossing on Earth. And yet this community has spent most of the last century fighting to be seen by the city it technically belongs to. It started as its own independent town before residents voted to be annexed into San Diego in 1957, mostly to solve a water shortage. Then came the freeways. Interstates 5 and 805 were both expanded through San Ysidro in the 1960s and 70s, bulldozing roughly 200 homes and splitting the original neighborhood into pieces that never fully reconnected. 4. Unemployment here runs near 7%, median income around $65,000, against a median home value of $378,000. San Ysidro isn't struggling because it lacks importance. It's the opposite. A neighborhood asked to carry enormous national economic weight while receiving a fraction of the investment that weight would seem to justify anywhere else. Think about what actually flows through here on an average day. Tens of thousands of commuters crossing north for jobs across San Diego County, cross-border retail spending that props up entire categories of the local economy, and a port of entry that recently underwent a modernization project running into the hundreds of millions of dollars. That federal money shows up for the infrastructure. It rarely shows up at the same scale for the people living in its shadow. Number 2. Mission Valley. Mission Valley is, in almost every visible way, the strangest entry on this list. This isn't a forgotten corner of the city, it's the opposite. 2 of San Diego's largest malls sit here, along with Snapdragon Stadium, and the valley itself is where California effectively began, the site of the state's first Spanish mission, founded in 1769, Ulrichsthal. Economically, residents are doing fine. Income near $75,000, unemployment low. 1. What lands Mission Valley at number 2 is crime, particularly property crime that runs dramatically above both the city and national averages, concentrated around the riverbed and trolley corridor after dark. 4. A 200-acre redevelopment project is currently underway along the old golf course site, promising thousands of new housing units and a restored stretch of the San Diego River. If it delivers, Mission Valley could look completely different within a decade. Part of what makes the safety numbers so persistent is the geography itself. It's a wide, low-lying valley bisected by the San Diego River, with a riverbed that has, for years, doubled as an informal encampment area for the city's unhoused population. Residents often describe daytime Mission Valley as feeling like any other busy retail district, and nighttime Mission Valley as carrying a noticeably different atmosphere. Number 1. Mount Hope. And that brings us to number 1. There's a grim poetry to the name. Mount Hope takes its identity from the 115-acre cemetery at its center, established in 1869 by Alonzo Horton, the man widely credited as the father of modern San Diego. Horton himself is buried there today, alongside author Raymond Chandler and several former city mayors. 2-3. Mount Hope today is ethnically diverse and dense, home to one of the highest concentrations of Latino residents in the city. Unemployment sits close to 8%. Median household income barely clears $37,000. Median home value runs around $288,000, once again wildly disconnected from what local households actually earn. Crime compounds it, with violent and property crime both running well above the city average. Mount Hope isn't the single most dangerous block in San Diego, and it isn't the poorest either. What puts it at number one is that no category works in its favor. Income, unemployment, home value, and safety are all pulling the same direction at once. A slow, compounding stack of disadvantages that never got interrupted long enough for the neighborhood to catch a break. There's something worth sitting with in that origin story. Horton is remembered across the city as a visionary, the developer who essentially willed modern downtown San Diego into existence. He's celebrated in history books and in the name of Horton Plaza. The neighborhood that grew up around his own final resting place has spent more than a century absorbing almost none of that same investment. A handful of other neighborhoods come up again and again in this same conversation. Logan Heights and Barrio Logan, both southeast of downtown, share Mount Hope's story of historic disinvestment. Though Logan Heights has also become home to Chicano Park and its famous murals, now a National Historic Landmark. Oak Park and Lemon Grove, further east, deal with lower home values and a downtown corridor locals describe as best avoided after dark. And National City, just south of the border, carries much of the same weight as San Ysidro. None of them quite made the top 7, but ask 10 different San Diegans to build this list themselves, and at least a few of these names would probably make someone's cut. Step back, and a pattern emerges that has nothing to do with any single neighborhood on this list. Memorial, boxed in by freeways it never asked for. Palm City, priced so low, the market has stopped paying attention. Emerald Hills, stable and appreciating, still weighed down by a crime number heavy enough to outweigh everything going right. Midtown, wealthy by home price and still out of reach for the people working nearby. San Ysidro, carrying more national economic weight than almost anywhere in the country while receiving a fraction of the investment back. Mission Valley, an economic powerhouse undercut by a safety problem, residents feel the moment the sun goes down. And Mount Hope, where every factor points the same direction at once. 7 different stories. One shared thread. A gap between what things cost and what people actually earn, and between how much weight a neighborhood carries for the city and how much investment it gets back in return. That gap won't close because of a ranking video. It closes, if it ever does, through the same slow, unglamorous work these neighborhoods have been asking for in one form or another for decades. Investment that doesn't skip past them on the way to the coast. Infrastructure that serves the people actually living there. And a conversation about San Diego's future that includes them in the room. If you live in one of these neighborhoods, or grew up in one, I'd genuinely love to hear from you in the comments. Tell me what the data doesn't capture. And if you want a deeper dive into any one of these 7, let me know which one, and I'll put it together. Before you go, if this kind of deep dive is useful to you, do me a favor and hit that like button, and subscribe if you haven't already. It genuinely helps this channel keep making videos like this one. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.